and welcome to Trail Grazers, where we focus on great homemade food for the trail. And there is nothing better on a coolish evening around a campfire than to have good old beef stew and homemade biscuits. So that's what we're focusing on today, is the beef stew part. Now, out in our food storage, we have quart jars of beef stew, and this is the perfect amount for Jim and me. And it's ready to just dump in a pan and heat it and eat it. So we could pack this. It's heavy and it's wet and it's in a jar, but we've done it before. We can do it again. Today, what we're going to do is I'm going to make a fresh batch of beef stew, and then we are going to freeze dry it. So we will bank it out in our food storage area, and then when we're ready to have a beef stew meal on the trail, then I'll just put some in a Mylar bag and pack it in with our pantry ingredients, and we can have it right there. So what I have here is our little butane stove, and this is such a cool little stove. It's very lightweight. It takes these canisters of butane, which we have been able to find for a pretty good price lately. And it's easy to transport. If you wanted to take this on the trail with you, this would work beautifully. And I love cooking on cast iron. Now, we can use this in the house, provided we do two things. First of all, we're safety nuts. This is a carbon monoxide alarm. And we also have our back door cracked about this much, so that we have plenty of circulation. I would never do this with anything propane, but it says that it's safe to do in your kitchen, and a lot of people do it, so I'm going to do it. This is one of the cast iron pots that we take into the, I was gonna say into the field, that harking back to my science field trip days, that we take camping with us when we go travel. I love cooking with cast iron. So I'm going to start this pot going.
There we go.
And I'm going to put just a little bit of olive oil in the bottom. What we are going to do first is we're going to brown the stew meat. Just brown it. We're not going to cook it all the way through. Now, with meat prices being as high as they are, I am cutting down on the amount of meat that we are going to be using, and instead I am beefing up the vegetables so that we'll have more vegetables, and that is fine with us. We love veggies, and this meat will still give us some protein, so that'll be just great. So what's going to happen here is I'm going to brown the meat, and I'm going to dredge it first with this mixture, and all this is just, it's about a cup of flour with salt and pepper and my secret ingredient, which is a teaspoon of baking soda. It changes the pH of the meat and makes it hold more moisture and makes it more juicy. So that's a secret I will be happy to share with you because I use it often. So I'm just going to put a few at a time in this Ziploc bag and shake it up, baby. And as soon as this starts to smoke, we are just going to brown this meat. And there it goes. And then move it over into the Instant Pot that I have right over there waiting to go. Then I will tell you about what the other ingredients are. And then we're going to let that cook. Dredging with this little bit of flour will thicken up the stew a bit. We may need to add a little bit more flour when we are done. After it's finished cooking, we won't know until we see that. All right, so we have all of this delicious meat right here. It was about 2.5 pounds of boneless rump roast that Jim cut in pieces for me. All right, now what I'm adding is this bowl of veggies. Now when I fix stew, I rarely have a recipe. I've been making it for so many years. When my kids were little, they loved it, and I just pretty much use what is in the refrigerator. But today, I at least tried to measure to give you some idea. Please use your own favorite recipe. You're welcome to use mine. So I have in this bowl 2 cups of chopped celery, 1 pound of chopped mushrooms, 2 cups of carrots, 2 cups of potatoes, 2 shallots. I like shallots a lot. They're not as harsh of a taste as onion. They're a little bit sweeter, and they just lend such a lovely flavor. So these veggies are going in. See if I got everything. In this, I am adding a couple of tablespoons of tomato paste, a couple of bay leaves, a teaspoon of thyme, and about a cup of rough chopped parsley. So good. I'm going to put in some Worcestershire sauce, probably a couple of tablespoons. I like a deep and robust flavor for our stew. And I have some garlic here, probably the equivalent of a couple of cloves of garlic minced. Then I'm just going to put some water in. It will make a lot more juice as it cooks. I don't want to make it too thin. Oh, it's smelling so good.
So how much water?
I don't know. Probably 3 cups. And that's about it. All right, we're going to go ahead and get this started. Manual. And bump the time up to 45 minutes. We're good to go. So we will be back when this is done, and then we'll get it in the freezer trays. So see you then. So this is always an exciting moment for me. Whenever I open up a pot like this, this is kind of and I haven't made this exact recipe before because every time I make beef stew, I make it a little bit different. So it just barely quit. You can still probably see some of the residual steam coming up. Always open away from your face. All right, so here it is. Oh, it's thick, it's luscious, it's lovely. Now, Jim, you need to weigh in here. This is, do you want me to thicken it with a little bit more flour, or is it thick enough for you?
It'll be okay.
I think it is. I think it is thickened up nicely. Okay, so we are now going to, well, first of all, I'm going to taste it. Just get some of this liquid here to see how it is. I may have to taste that again just to be sure. Don't jiggle the camera while you're laughing.
I'm working on it.
It needs a little salt, but we can do that at the table. I'm not going to do it now. All right, so I'm just going to dish this up, and we will evenly distribute it 4 ways into these trays. Oh my gosh, this just looks wonderful. Smells wonderful. And then we're going to let it cool out here on the counter until we're ready to put it in our outside freezer for the night. Not the freeze dryer, just the freezer. And we'll let it freeze completely overnight. And then in the morning, before I leave for the university, I will put these in the freeze dryer. So, okay, looks great. I can just picture us sitting out by the campfire eating a bowl of this nice hot stew with some good hot biscuits right out of the oven, or cornbread, whichever you want. Sound good to you?
Sounds good to me.
Okay, so we will see you when we're ready to take these out of Kelvin. We're back with the finished product. It's right here. Now, you see that it is wrapped in this clean garbage bag, plastic bag, because sometimes these batches finish at very inconvenient times that are just not suitable for us to do any videoing. And we do not want them to rehydrate by any humidity or moisture in the air. We live in the desert, so that's highly unlikely, but still we want to protect them. Now, when I uncover these, you may notice something. you may think that these look just a little bit different than the ones that we put in the freezer. And if you think that, you are correct. We have had some setbacks the past few days, and one of them was that we finished videoing the other video and there was a glitch with the sound. So I have made a whole new batch of stew, and we don't mind because we love having stew on our food storage shelf anyway, and it's so wonderful on the trail. And so this is a different batch of stew, and it doesn't have the parsley in it, but I followed the recipe as closely as possible. Now, one of the reasons that I handle this with my hands is so that I can feel and know that for sure that it is completely dry, because we want this, these are all low acid foods. We don't want any threat of botulism, and so we are eliminating the major thing in the environment for botulism bacterium, and that is moisture that allows them to go vegetative and then make that toxin. So we want these to be very, very dry, and so I will be feeling for any squishiness or moisture with this food. Now, one of the things that we want to do first is I'm just going to put this little piece right here in this bowl, and we're going to reconstitute it to see how quickly it goes. And I have weighed before and after and calculated the amount of water that was lost, and then tried to reconstitute with that amount of water. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. So now I just pretty much eyeball it. This was a boiling kettle of water just a moment ago, so I'm just going to pour a little bit in here. That's probably about right for this. The great thing about this is if it looks like maybe I have not put in quite enough, I can just add some more. Isn't that just great? Now when I do this on the trail, I don't do it like this. I'm just going to cover this with another little bowl and let it steam in there for a minute. I will usually take just the amount that we need for an evening meal in a plastic container, and then I will put it in a pot, add water, and bring the whole thing together to a boil, and that seems to work really well. I don't like this. I'm going to redo this. So I'm just going to cut this in strips. Now the way we package this with vacuum sealing, this stew will keep for years. Just in the jars, just like this. We have a fairly dark, cool place where we keep things in our Kelvin lab. And I am feeling these, watching for soft spots, wet spots. I think we'll probably have about 3 jars. That's what our usual amount of jars is. All right, I'm going to continue doing this. We'll come back when the jars are filled, and our stew is probably reconstituted. It does not take a long time at all. No. So there's our stew. I'm just going to take a little bite of potato here. Potatoes all done. Here's a bite of meat. Meat is completely done, and here's carrot. The whole thing is done, and that was, what, a minute and a half, so it works very fast with the freeze-dried. We'll be back when these are done. All right, I brought you back early because as I was going through here, if you can get up really close, I want to show you something. Notice how hard these are here These are like crackers. Now, watch. Squishy. And so, because of that, I am going to put these have moisture in them. I'm going to put them on my dehydrator tray. This whole corner. I'm not going to take any chances with that. I'm just going to put this whole thing. That is. All right, the rest is good, and we'll be back. All right, so this was the extent of the ones that were not quite done, just that one whole corner. Now, this is how I handle this. And it doesn't happen often, but it does happen sometimes. And so you always have to be vigilant. So these need more drying in order to be safe if I'm going to preserve them. If I'm going to reconstitute them tonight for dinner, I wouldn't even bother, but I want to show you what I do. I would do one of two things. If I pulled them out of the freeze dryer and caught it at that moment, I could set the freeze dryer for more time. But here's the thing about that. I had 3 trays that were perfect and just one edge of one tray that was not. And so by isolating only the food that needs more drying, then I can either use my oven just on a cookie sheet, put them in there, and then heat it up to about 300 until the moisture is all driven out, or I can use my dehydrator. I generally just put them on a tray like this, stick them in my dehydrator, and within about an hour, maybe 2 hours, they are completely dry and safe to go into these jars. Now I have 2 full jars and one that is not quite full. So when these are done, I'm probably going to just stick them right in here. Now when we get ready to take these on the trail, I'll go out and pull down one of these jars and probably take about a quart of stew with us. That's about the right amount for Jim and me. Now right now I'm going to vacuum seal them. Sometimes I show vacuum sealing, sometimes I don't. These are previously used lids for canning. In fact, they're quite old actually. So I'm hoping that these are going to work. And even though I'll be adding more to this, I'm going to vacuum seal it right now anyway. This is our Weston vacuum sealer. We really like it. It's a very good one. And the attachments are not Weston. They are from Food Saver. And so I just bought the attachment separate from Food Saver on Amazon and got lucky because the attachments that came with the hose fit the port right here. So turning it on and then turning it to accessory. This one is done, and I will finish the other 2 and then we'll be back. When those are in here, we will have 3 half-gallon jars ready in our bank out in our food storage. And actually, because of the glitches that we had, I had 3 just like this out there already. So now we have 6. And I am thrilled to pieces to have this much on hand. So this will be fantastic for taking on the trail. Light, easy to carry, easy to reconstitute, a quick meal if we come back off the trail and we're just exhausted and we want to just sit down and have a meal instead of having a lot of preparation first and then a meal. So thank you for joining us, and we will see you out there on the trail.